It's all about big boys' toys, what they've got, how they enjoy them, what it takes to make them work. Sometimes a hobby can be an obsession. It can grow inside you and it consumes you with passion, cost and time. Never take anybody at face value, or what the quiet guy in the pub actually does for a living. Sometimes it's the ordinary guy in the street who can throw out some surprises.
There's people out there who restore all sorts of things.
There's an awful lot of time, money and vintage metal involved with what these guys do. Now when we talk of war machines, we talk of death and destruction. We often imagine ugly, warmongering generals, blood and guts everywhere. But it isn't always like that. The next guy is one of the nicest blokes in the world. He's quiet, unassuming, educated, well-spoken, holds down a good job. But as far as his hobby's concerned, you just don't want to get in his way. This is one seriously big boy's toy. Here's Andy and his gun.
In the peaceful setting of a small country show in the west of England, people come to show off their hobbies, vehicles, horses, engines and the like. It's a friendly, folksy, rather quaint affair, and rolls along at its own pace over a summer's weekend in the beautiful Cotswold countryside. The line of old cars and trucks always attracts attention. Memories from a bygone age. And then there's Andy with his gun. There are guns, there are big guns, and then there's this gun. Called the Abbott, it was used by the British Army for many years in different theatres, and is a truly impressive piece of kit.
My name's David Carr. It's a 1960s Abbott self-propelled gun. That's a piece of mobile artillery, effectively, a gun on a tracked carrier. Carries a 105mm shell for close work up to about 12 mile range.
It looks like a tank, but it's not. There are differences.
Only real difference between the two is you stop and fire a self-propelled gun. So effectively your vehicle is just a carriage for moving the gun from place to place, and when the gun is stationary, only the gun is in use. The vehicle itself is effectively redundant. With a tank you fire on the move, so the tank and gun are one operational unit.
It's a large machine and not easy to control safely on narrow English country lanes. People are always impressed, but always ask why.
This is the fourth tracked vehicle I've had. So all bought as restoration projects. So bought mostly running, semi-complete, and then restored to running order, fitted out with all the kit they would have carried in service. It's a challenge, I suppose. You take a vehicle that has come out of service at the end of its service life and you put it back into a condition where it was as it was in service and take it out and allow people to enjoy it. Nice for charity fundraising, for British Legion events with poppy appeal, and just good to allow people to see.
Having mobile field artillery goes back centuries. Getting the cannon into position to be able to bombard the enemy with shell and shot was vital to generals such as Wellington and Marlborough. In all conflicts, the guns needed to be taken to the battlefield over any terrain, assembled and made ready to fire as quickly as possible, under any conditions. The horse-drawn artillery has since become a ceremonial regiment, but also operates in combat with modern equipment.
Number 1 gun, fire! The staccato bark of the gun crashes out, and the pressure waves resound around the park. In sequence, the guns continue to fire until the salute is completed.
The British Army moved on from horse-drawn weapons and developed the field artillery tractor. The 6-man crew in the vehicle, the limber with ammunition behind, followed by the gun. Later in World War II, enterprising British engineers began working with a trusty 25-pounder gun, mounting it on the ubiquitous Sherman tank chassis. The result was called the Sexton. Post-war developments saw the size of guns increase, along with the range and firepower.
Anything of any significance would take it out quite easily. They would normally sit behind active lines and fire in from a distance, hence the 12-mile range on the gun. So it's road legal. You can register them for the road just within the width limits and weight limits, and has rubber pads in the tracks so you don't actually damage the road surface. It carries all the same lighting as a car would do, so indicators, brake lights, headlights. When they were designed for the army, they were designed so they could be used on the roads.
Like a lot of people with big machines, part of the fun is showing these to the public. Even the local police were impressed with the machine and its roadworthiness. Safety is a major concern, and the necessary precautions are always taken. Andy takes us inside his pride and joy. There is not a lot of room inside to operate and fire the gun, and during combat situations, this area would be locked down.
It wasn't a friendly environment to be in, especially as this is only maybe 40 or 50% of the equipment still. Because you have to remember as well, this is a vehicle designed in the 60s, so whereas things like the radio system, which is up in the corner here, you could probably do all of that now in a very small handheld walkie-talkie type. The vehicle's split into 3 main areas. At the front of the vehicle you have an engine compartment with the engine and transmission. Next to that you have the driving compartment where the driver will sit. It's very simple driving controls. Okay, so there's a crew of 3 in the back of the vehicle. The seat I'm sitting on at the moment will be the loader's seat, so his job will be to load the gun during use. There's a 2-part ammunition system, firing a 105mm projectile. Then they load a charge case behind it. You see 4 of them on the rear sponson there. Close the breech of the gun, and then the gun's electrically fired. You have an electric rammer for positioning the projectile within the gun, but good old-fashioned British Army and often seen in British-built vehicles can't be without a piece of wood of some form, so you have a hand rammer as well. At the front you have a layer's seat, and he aims and fires the gun. And at the top you have a commander's seat. It has several roles. One, he has overall command of the vehicle, so when the vehicle's in motion he gives directions to the driver, and the driver responds to those directions of control. But also when the vehicle's stationary and being used in its gun role, he can decide whether to allow the layer to fire the gun, or he can override that so that only he can fire the gun, and he will take the gun data. It's a member of the 430 series of vehicles, so you have Abbott as a self-propelled gun, and then a personnel carrier in the FD432. The chassis itself is common between the vehicles and is still in service today. So having never served in the army, and only restored these vehicles from a point of historical context, it's difficult to say what it would have been like. I do know several people who have served in them, and they all describe it as hot, noisy and cramped. And they tend to be the 3 favourite words. And you can just imagine the noise of a 105mm gun firing. Somebody sat here on this seat, 2 people sat next to me. Even with noise-cancelling headphones, it's going to be noisy. I wouldn't want to be in service in one, and I have great respect for those that do.
After a couple of days of public viewing, it's time to take the monster back home, which is not as straightforward as it seems.
It's a big bit of kit. It's quite slow, top speed around 30 miles per hour. It is automatic, so you don't have to worry about the gears. Steering is just 2 sticks. Pull left stick to go left, right stick to go right. Both sticks to stop. I always drive with a commander. You don't have to by law, but I always drive with somebody else sat in the turret purely because the vision behind is so poor. You have to give yourself plenty of space because it turns by stopping one track, which means if the front end of the vehicle turns 3 feet to the left, the back end of the vehicle goes 3 feet to the right. So you have to be cognizant all the time. People tend to be looking at the vehicle, not paying attention to indicators and brake lights and things. So even though they're there, it's handy to have someone else who can just firm up that indication to anyone following. It's not something that you can go out half-hearted. You need to do it properly. If these things go wrong, it causes a lot of damage. You try not to drive it too far because you're concentrating, it's quite tiring. As it is taking it to the extreme. Having said that, these are kept running for people to see and they're part of our history and heritage. So it's good that they're kept in showable order. It's nice to see a tank, but to hear a tank drive past you is a very different experience. A bit of a mixture of the two, the general interest and the big boys' toys.
Big boys' toys. It's what it's all about.